Here. Theo Thomas Guard.
Here.
John Dobbin.
Here?
And Kathy McGrath is
Here.
Yep.
Okay,
Very good.
remotely.
All members are present. I'll seek a motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? The ayes have it. Next item is consider approval of 2020-2021 Port Edward School District reopening plan. Kyle.
Okay, so, give me just a moment here. I'm going to share a screen over to Kathy so she can do a couple of things here, Kathy. So, I'm going to show it to you in this view just because if I think it's a little easier for me to deal with it in this view at the moment. So, the reopening plans have certainly been something we've been working on for really the past 3 months. Really started in earnest when we finally received some initial guidance from the Department of Public Instruction in mid to late June. And since then, we have convened multiple meetings of different working groups within the district to study the reopening, to examine it, to look at it from Port Edward's point of view. And by that I mean, we certainly have some unique circumstances within our district that some of our neighbors don't have. And quite frankly, every district has a unique set of circumstances they have to try to address in the reopening plans. So as we worked on this, we did this in consultation with the Wood County Department of Health. We did this in consultation with other school districts within Wood County, with other school districts in our Central Wisconsin Conference. We did this in consultation with our own medical advisor, Dr. Chamberlain. We did this in consultation with medical advisors who've been working with other districts in the area. And as well, just simply yesterday, had the Wood County Director for the Department of Health review the plan and give us a basically go ahead at this time with what we have from the health department's standpoint. So this has really been the work of quite a few people. We've had over 30 different staff members work on different parts of this plan from different areas of the staff. I think we had about 17 or 18 of the teaching staff working on this plan, along with, and again, at different aspects and different points, maintenance staff, food service staff, the paraprofessional aides, our office staffs, all have seen different pieces and points and parts of this. This morning we met with our entire staff, as many as could show up, and I believe we were probably nearing 70 staff members out of our 75 at that meeting this morning. Reviewed the plan, asked for questions, and then that staff broke up into smaller groups to discuss aspects of it. And even since then, we've made changes. So, yeah, there's been quite a bit of work on this so far. Really, we went at this with 3 different main design elements. I'm going to enlarge my screen just a hair if I can. In fact, I might change my view. See if this works. No. It's gonna lock me out again. Hope not. There we go. We've had 3 different design elements that we looked at. One was safety, and certainly making sure that student safety and staff safety were top considerations in this. And again, we've done this in conjunction with Wood County and the State Department of Health, Department of Public Instruction. We looked at the CDC guidance and again worked with our local physicians. Just today we've received more guidance from the Department of Public Instruction in this, and we're anticipating next week receiving even more guidance from the Department of Health at the state level. So safety has been one of the key elements of design. Instruction is certainly a key element. So we're planning, and as it says here, we focused on how to return students and staff to the classroom for traditional instruction, and we've looked at how to deliver this instruction in a safe manner Further, we're accounting for the ability to transition between opening plans. So not only in-person instruction, but various elements of either online or off-site instruction, and keeping that in conjunction with the core elements that we have in place for grading, attendance, course expectations, graduation expectations, and basically how we can shore that up compared to where we were last spring. Additionally, this plan is designed to be flexible and adaptable. And as we transition from one model of instruction to another, if that has to happen, when it happens, that again, it accounts for student, staff, and parent capacity. It also, again, we maintain some consistency between whether it's in-person or virtual or off-site instruction. And I'm going to just mention on the flexibility and adaptable part. As we'll ask you to approve the plan tonight, I would also ask that as you approve that you approve it in a manner that allows for us to make changes to it as necessary in order to implement the plan. So a few things here are design elements. Again, one of the pieces is everyday in person, making sure that we're K-12 capable, and in reality pre-K-12 capable, and working with the Y. That we provide district support for parents who may desire virtual only. This may be synchronous with actual instruction taking place in the classrooms, but it could be fully online content, such as programs that we are using and utilizing, such as EduSeer and Apex Learning. So we have some fully online content that we have access to and can provide. And with this, we have the ability as well to transition, again, as I've mentioned, to other plans in this. A second element of this design is we did look at this model where you go from, like, you have 2 weeks with a cohort of kids, or 2 days with a cohort, that you take a day, and then you have 2 more days with a different cohort. We looked at that, and there's a lot of, I know some of our bigger area schools are going to that, but with our size and some of the other adjustments we're making, we feel like we can be in person, but if we can't be in person, that the next step down from that is probably a K-6 model where we're in person, and that 7-12 goes virtual. And again, part of the reason for this K-6 in person is the even more extensive cohorting we can do in this building, along with the thought process that where the data is, with how the disease is transmitted, who transmits it, that within those younger grades we can create an element where it is certainly safe, or as safe as we can make it. I don't think anything is ever 100% safe, pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic. But in this model, we would go from everyday in-person K-12 to a model where students with the least risk remain in school, and that's the least risk for transmission. Additionally, working so that that we're accounting for learning at all levels, meaning the 7-12 students wouldn't be, it would not be like the spring. This would be, there's attendance being taken, there's class expectations, grading remains consistent. The final model in our design would be a fully off-site or virtual model. And again, we would have the ability to transition into this, and our plan is to keep grading consistent, to keep those expectations consistent, regular attendance being taken, those kinds of things, and that we transition into that if needed. So those are basically the 3 basic elements of this, that we have 3 models of instruction that we can function in. Yes?
Question, Kyle. And I know it's an impossible answer, it's an impossible question, because it changes literally by the moment. But are there any CDC, state health Wood County Public Health DPI guidelines in terms of triggers between these three?
So that's kind of that's what I think we may be getting next week from the Department of Health. From what we've been told is that they are going to come out with some metrics. And again, we were told that this week in a meeting with the Assistant Superintendent of Schools for the state of Wisconsin, that they are coming out with more guidance on that early next week.
And of course, that'll change literally by the moment.
Yeah.
as this
The problem with
develops.
some of the metrics, and again, where we've looked at it is working probably hand in hand with Wood County Health and taking their recommendations. The problem with a few of the metrics that we've seen out there is, and I'm just using this as an example, this isn't an actual metric, but I'm using this as kind of an example as to how some of the metrics that I've seen are out there. 19 cases, you're in school, but at 20 cases, you're not.
Right.
What's the difference between 19 and 20,
Right.
right? And so there's some nuance to that, and we are trying to work through that with Wood County Health as to what may trigger what. And
I
so,
would foresee a situation with what we're projecting here. You get a case or two. You get a student who's sick, a staff member, a parent, a family, whatever it is, and different people are going to perceive the threat level of that differently. They're going to perceive it as, oh my God, shut everything down, and you're going to perceive it as, well, it's one person, quarantine them, treat them, and move on.
yep.
And you'll have everything happening between A and Z. So.
And there
there's
are
very different perceptions of this.
Yeah, there are what the county health department calls algorithms. I would call it a flow chart. It's my social studies side speaking. But these algorithms talk about when to withhold somebody from school or basically exclude somebody from school based on a whole bunch of yes and no questions and symptoms or not symptoms and tests or not tests. Those have been refined a bit for us by Wood County Health. And again, I think we're looking to see if there are further refinements to those algorithms next week with the Department of Health.
I got a question.
So that's up to you to either entertain that or not, Mr. Dobbin. Yep. There's not a public comment
There's not
session,
public-
but if,
Yeah, there's not a public comment.
that's up to you, unless we want to.
There's not a public comment.
Yep.
So what is this for if you can't say nothing? I'm
Well,
just trying to find out if you're gonna be able to, would you have a choice of sending your kids to school or not?
Yes,
That'll come, that'll come.
yep, and I'm getting to that. Through the presentation today, I'll get to that.
Yeah,
Yep.
it'll be in this presentation.
Yep. And actually, we just covered that. There is, we're allowing, and I'll just review that very quickly. We're allowing for parents to make that choice. In our last questionnaire we sent out to parents, we asked them for information so we could get back with them. And we'll be working on that over the next couple weeks, as well as we are going to, when we release the full opening, we are going to ask parents to, if we haven't gotten to them, to get to us so that we can go over what some of those options might look like. And we've got multiple options that we're working on. So, yep. Yep. So, I'm gonna go keep on moving. So, in working on our instructional planning program, we've really looked at some different considerations across the board, K-12. One of those is certainly our devices and trying to push down to prepare for this as best as possible, to push through one-to-one technology as much as possible through as many grade levels as possible. We have enough on hand to outfit our 7th through 12th grade. We have ordered, and we ordered several months ago now, additional machines. There is a backlog on getting those. In fact, we just recently changed our order in order to speed that up and tried to make some changes that would help speed that up. We're looking for those additional devices to be available in September, October. However, we do have we have enough to fully outfit 712, and we do have additional machines that we could issue out to students in the other grade levels on, I'm going to say, as an as-needed basis, but we're somewhat limited on that. We probably could outfit another 40 to 50 students. And again, we're working on getting the additional equipment. It's something we ordered early on, but there is a massive backlog on that. We are working to implement campus learning, which is an infinite campus program. We use that as our student management program in order to help us mesh our online platforms so that they feed better into Infinite Campus. We ran into some problems with grading in the spring for people using some different programs out there, and so we're trying to eliminate some of that. We have acquired and have on hand hotspots that we can issue out if there's a family in need of that does not have the ability to log in. We're working to make sure that our staff is trained and that we have some technology enhancements where possible, where we can get those at this time on these programs. And we're going to work on a clear set of procedures for participating virtually with some norms and expectations for our students. As a starting point for all instruction this spring, or this fall, I should say, what I want to get to is that we do need to step back to the spring and see where our students are at today and meet them where they're at. They are probably not going to be where they typically would be. So, you know, that discussion probably falls along the lines of maybe using as an example, a student walking into Algebra 1, the teacher is going to have to be cognizant that they may have to step back and figure out where they left off and truly got to in 8th grade math. But that same thing applies in reading, in English, in multiple places across our curriculum that our staff is going to have to step back. And as well, there may be some initial instruction that we have to take on to fill those gaps from the spring. We're also going to have to take time for in session, if we have students in school, to discuss hygiene practices and procedures. And we're going to have to give attention to mental and emotional health needs of our students, and I would say of probably our staff as well as we work through this entire process. For students who might be quarantined or self-isolating through, maybe they've been identified as having a contact and they need to, they hit that in that algorithm chart, they need to quarantine for 10 days, 14 days, 3 days, so be it. However that chart plays out with county health, we're trying to work so that those students have the ability to participate in classes and that they have access to their schoolwork and teachers for directions. So, in the middle school, high school specifically, every day in person, what we are looking to do is go to a in grades 5, 12, a block instruction so that we will, so that, you know, essentially students have an 8-hour class day in a normal year. We're looking to do on day 1, basically hours 1, 2, 7, and 8, and on day 2, hours 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we take our schedule that we would have normally had set up, and we're going to divide it between these two these 2 days. The reason you see that go 1, 2, 7, 8, and then 3, 4, 5, 6 is because classes 5, 6, 7, and 8 would typically be afternoon classes. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are typically morning, and we're trying to keep those classes in the afternoon and in the morning. That way that shared staff between the 2 buildings, because we do have an element of shared staff, we can move them between the 2 buildings if needed. In the middle school, high school, staggering the passing times, and trying to create less uncontrolled interactions between students. So making it so that our middle school and high school students aren't necessarily crossing paths during the day. And again, doing these blocks so that we don't have as many interactions each day. Fewer crossover connections between the students and staff is really what this is about. And that additionally, we are looking to make it so that the middle school students move less and the teachers move more often when possible. So if it's possible to keep, let's call it 5th grade section 1 in the same classroom for most of the day, we're going to try to do that where possible. Might not be possible in every single circumstance or situation, but we're trying to set it up so that the students are moving less throughout the day. The teachers are going to them when possible, and that overall students aren't crossing paths with each other, and only on a limited basis.
Are we able to keep 6-foot spacing in the classroom? And looked at as far as
We're going to do our best to do that. We are doing is we have made some adjustments to our class schedule already to accommodate to make it so that we have smaller classes. So we're going to do our best to create the most distance possible. In the CDC and DHS stuff, they basically acknowledge that may not always be entirely possible, but we're going to do our best to make it possible. So yeah. I think we'll be pretty close everywhere. I mean, I don't. Yeah.
well, to minimize the amount that they have to wear masks, because it's just.
Well, in the way the state order is, the 6-foot distance at the moment isn't really going to come into play on that. So we are waiting. We're hoping to get a bit more clarification on that state order. The governor's office did put a frequently asked questions piece out, but in talking with the health department and talking with our health director, there are going to be times we are going to have to give kids breaks from wearing the masks. So, and the teaching staff as well. I mean, people will need breaks. So, in the 5-6 in-person, 7-12 virtual format, again, the 5th-6th meets in person in conjunction with how the elementary would be still at a K4 meeting. It's easy to maintain those cohorts. K6 much more effectively than 7-12. The daily schedule, we may have to do some modification here. This is going to be one of the changes that our principals don't even know about that I haven't included here yet, but this tells you how fluid the plan has to be. We may have to actually leave that in block. So we'll get there. I look over to Mrs. Schroeder. These are some of the nuances we're working through. Regardless, the grading scale is going to remain A through F. Attendance is going to be taken hourly for those classes. And our plan at this point, if we're in virtual, even is to have teaching staff continue to report to school, unless we would have, for some reason, from the county health department, be told that they can't. And again, a 5-12 virtual format, if we had to do that, again, meeting every day, we're going to work on that schedule piece yet, so that might have to be a little fluid. Grading scale remaining the same, attendance taken, and the teaching staff, again, reporting to school, if that is allowed. At the elementary level, K4, every day in person. Students are going to remain in their grade level cohorts each day. They'll travel through the building only if necessary, and they will not cross paths. I've got to fix a typo in there. Students are not going to be allowed to pass between the rooms. For the special area rooms, if they need to travel to the gymnasium, the art room, or the music room, they'll travel when they're called, not until then. That, again, makes it so that we don't have students crossing paths in hallways. They're going to continue on with their standards-based grading. They'll cohort by grade level for recess and lunch. And then the playground itself, actually, during their day is going to be divided up into zones, and they'll have different zones in the playground area. So it might be one set of playground equipment one day, and the next set another day, so that they rotate through and get opportunities in different areas. The K4 model goes to an offsite or virtual. Again, continuing with standards-based grading, using Google Classroom, the Classroom Dojo, Infinite Campus, and the Infinite Classroom will be utilized. There may have to be, at this level in particular, some different modes of delivery, some online, probably some not, especially if we would have to go to this mode early on due to the lack of of technology and waiting on the technology to come online for that, as we've, again, as I said, we've ordered it. Attendance though will be taken. We'll distribute Chromebooks as they become available to classes, and we'll utilize packets as necessary. We may need to do some of that. Some Chromebooks, and again, I mentioned this earlier, may be available to families with no other access points. So we do have some that we'll have in reserve that hopefully we could fill in the gaps at the K4 and 5-6 levels until we get more on hand. So, questions? At this point, the governor's order makes the face mask question somewhat moot. And so at this point in our plan, I think it is easiest to move it forward with face coverings mandatory, unless there's a medical reason or other exception as clarified by the Department of Public Instruction or Department of Health Services. We're providing them for all students and staff through some generous grants and through the state of Wisconsin and some other means. We're going to have hand sanitizing stations installed in all classroom areas and common areas. Classrooms are going to be equipped with sanitizers to sanitize surfaces after student and staff use. We're working on, and we've procured touchless faucets and toilets, toilet flushers wherever possible, and we're going to be working on the installation of those. The water fountains have been turned off with the exception of the bottle fillers. We're adding one bottle filler over at the high school to accommodate, maybe two bottle fillers, to accommodate our upstairs classrooms so that they wouldn't have to travel to utilize bottle fillers. And we're going to encourage the outdoor spaces to be used when possible. So, as well as our environmental learning center.
How about face shields? Is that something that the staff will
Yep.
be able to utilize?
Yeah, there are some situations where we may be able to do that, and we have acquired face shields as well. So, and we may acquire more, but we've definitely acquired a stock to begin with. So, yes, Mrs.
I'm having a hard time hearing anyone else that talks,
Oh.
so if they can speak very loudly.
Or I can repeat. What I can do is, if there's commentary, I can move the computer. Otherwise, I can repeat the question for you. And
Okay.
that particular question had to do with, will there be face shields available? And yes, yes, we do have some that we have acquired, and there may be situations where we need to use those, and we'll have those. So.
Thank you.
Our nursing, we've already increased the hours for our school nurse. We're going to be moving medication distribution to our offices. So we have usually every year a bit of medication distribution that we need to do, and we're going to try to make it so that if it's a student who needs a simple medication on a daily basis, that they're not having to cross paths necessarily with students who may be in the nurse's office or in any other places for other reasons. And we're going to try to encourage that only medications be given at school if absolutely necessary. Obviously, we've got diabetic students where that's a necessity in some of those situations. We're also equipping the classrooms to handle the minor things, minor cuts, scratches, those kinds of things, so that that can just be handled within the classrooms. We've acquired personal protective equipment for the nurse and the health aide. We're working on a bit more, some disposable gowns. And then the nurse and health aide will travel to classrooms rather than simply sending students to the office. So we don't want students wandering around. So we're going to try to send staff to get them. And we'll get into more of some of the nursing procedures a little later. I have a section here on respond. If we have what might be a suspected COVID, I'll get to that. But these are just some of these logistical things that we've worked on to start with. Air quality, we have purchased and already have either some on hand or on its way some of the ionizing systems for our air handlers and univents to help us with filtration and to make it so that we are more effectively filtering the air. as well as all of these units have been cleaned and filters have been changed. We do have plexiglass for some areas, such as the kitchens, some of our office areas, that basically be that sneeze guard type prevention, for serving meals and whatnot, to make sure we're not, we're limiting some of those areas, maybe have a little more risk. Transportation, worked with Lamers. We're going to continue to work with them. They're assigning students to seats individually or by family. There will be hand sanitizer on every bus. Face masks are required. They're going to clean and sanitize after every route, and then they're increasing their occurrences of complete interior cleaning. That means they're hosing down the floors. They're doing full sanitation. Food service. We've added additional lunch periods to decrease the total number of students eating at any given time. At the moment, we are planning to move students into the cafeteria because we can clean those spaces and do it on a time schedule where we can clean between groups rather than having them eat in their classrooms. We're going to have markers in the cafeterias and spaces set up so that we can physically distance. We're going to utilize disposable trays and utensils. Obviously there's going to be cleaning and sanitation between each group. We're moving to a staff serve model. Typically part of the lunch service has always been the students serve themselves parts, like salad bar type items and whatnot. That'll all be staff served. And, but we will be doing, at least at the middle school, high school, breakfast will be served in the classroom spaces. Arrival and dismissal. The way students are coming into the building, we're going to work on this so the students are assigned, that they're reporting to their assigned areas immediately upon arrival. They're going to enter and exit at designated entrances in order to limit mass gatherings. So the best example I can give of that, the 7th and 8th grade will have a set of doors that we're going to have them enter. The 5th and 6th will have a set they can enter. High school students, another set. Bus students will be segregated in that as well. And so we're going to ask students to enter and exit the buildings in those areas. And again, that's the limit. 250 students all of a sudden being in the main hallway of the high school at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. So we're also going to stagger the dismissals. We have staff assigned to monitor those entrances and dismissals. We're going to stagger those so that, students who are walking, students who are bus riding, and those kinds of things, they're being dismissed on staggered times. And again, we'll be designating drop-off points at the entrances by grade level at the middle school, high school. At this building, it's a little different because it's a much smaller area you're dealing with. Maintenance, they're going to increase their daily and weekly cleanings of high-touch surfaces, so in bathrooms and common areas. There are sometimes areas where they clean it once a week. Those areas will be increased, especially if they're high-touch areas. We're going to work to procure, and we actually have procured at least one fogging unit at the moment. We're working on procuring a couple more, and these are they can be handheld units, backpack units, units on a cart. They ionize the cleaning particles so that the cleaning particle attaches to more of a surface area. And what it really does is the units are typically rated safe for electronics, but I describe it as if you were to pass the unit over the top of, as it's spraying out the cleaner, and these are the cleaners we could have in spray bottles, but what makes them more effective is as you pass the unit over like a surface like this table, if you pass it over the top of the table, the unit is set up in a way, those particles will actually be attracted to the bottom of the table too. So it covers more surface area with less work. Visitors to the buildings. This will be an area that's going to be very different for our parents, for all kinds of visitors. We're going to restrict access to only essential visits. We're going to screen visitors. Make sure, to walk through that set of COVID symptom-related questions that you hear a lot of other businesses doing in other places. The visitors need to wear face masks when they enter the building. That's part of the current mandate. And then they're going to have phone or video conferencing. We're going to encourage staff, if they have to schedule meetings, to do it as often either by phone or video conference in place of the face-to-face meetings. In our hallways, at the middle school, high school, I think I talked, we're going to have limited passing, or staggered passing times. We're going to try to limit down the use of lockers. We're working on some of those procedures as yet. There may be some use of backpacks. That's something that, you know, we've gone away from, but depending on how we figure this in the end, we may return to some of that. But again, if we limit down the number of classes a student has during the day, our hope is then that's fewer times they would have to visit their locker. In fact, I'm going to try to set it up so they don't really have to visit their locker. And that, you know, again, if we do go to a system where they're able to use backpacks to a certain degree, that may alleviate some of that need to travel to the lockers. Students, again, they're going to report to assigned areas here at the elementary. We've got floor markings going in areas where there tends to be a little more congestion. Even when we do have some of those, if we have a high school only passing time, there's a couple of spots where we have congestion, and so we're going to try to make it so students aren't running into each other. And then we're going to, here at the elementary school, restrict their access to their hooks and cubbies to only when absolutely necessary. Just in terms of talking attendance, attendance tracking expectations. Students and staff, obviously we want them to stay home when they are sick. I have a letter that'll be going out in conjunction with the Wood County Health Department that will explain some of that. And the Wood County Health Department has been very good at getting us all the information when we ask, and they've put together a letter that'll go home to parents. It'll be emailed home or sent via our communications. It'll also go snail mail. We think that one's highly important, so we want to make sure everybody sees that in more than one venue. School administrators, health staff are going to review our attendance patterns on a daily basis. If we see anything out of the ordinary, certainly working with within the school to identify what that might be and work with Wood County Health. We're going to communicate with the parents. You know, sometimes we're going to make sure we're aggressive in this area and communicating with the parents. If they're holding their student out, why are they doing that? You know, and is this as much as we can get communication? We want to do that with the parents.
Question. Incidental to a student or a family member being potentially ill, what potential problems are there with people deciding to change the fashion in which their child is attending? I mean, it's you could potentially have people starting virtually, and then things are going well, and then they return them, and then something doesn't go well, and they go back to virtual. I mean, and I'm just wondering how are we going to deal with the flipping back and forth between situations based upon what the parents perceive the best choice for their children to be?
Yep. And so when they go virtual, we're going to try to keep them on that at least through a grading period.
Okay.
So that's number one, because that's going to create the least havoc back and forth.
Right. Okay, good. Well, if that's...
There may be cases where we have students who are intermittently going virtual just because they can't attend school. And we're going to try to make as much of that available as possible as well.
Okay.
So.
Okay. You see what I was saying?
So Kathy, that question was, you know, how do, yep, how, yeah, okay, very good.
I got it.
Got it, okay. Obviously, we're going to be working with the Wood County Health Department on all of this. And again, working if we have students who have to self-quarantine, that they have that ability to participate virtually. Illness tracking at school, obviously, we're going to be working hand in hand with our school nurse, our school health aide, and the county in this as well. Kathy will have procedures that are established for how illness is reported to her, how her and her staff respond to that, and again, we're going to communicate as well to parents what to expect. Like if you're a student, but and the difficult piece of all of this will become, I'll give you the great example, a student who is allergy prone. We're going to need to know that well in advance and account for that to a certain degree. So we will have designated areas, and we've been working on what those areas are going to be in each building. We have isolation areas. If we have an ill student, staff member, we'll try to get them out of the building as quickly as possible. Student we may have to house until a parent can get them. And again, this could be somebody who's ill because they have a stomach flu, but it could also be ill because they have COVID. So obviously, if we do have a student who needs to be isolated due to illness, we'll have staff that are monitoring that student. And again, that'll fall somewhat, that'll fall a lot on the shoulders of our health staff to monitor. Obviously, we're going to be communicating to parents, keeping in mind that there are still health privacy laws in effect, so there is some information we certainly can't, but the health department is working with us on what we can communicate. Yes, sir?
I didn't see, when doing the tracking, do we have an out of state, do we have anything that eliminates if people live, if they go out of area, do we?
Probably from the student perspective, that is more difficult and will require some level of self-reporting to us. And I'm working with legal, so the question, Kathy, was if students are traveling or staff traveling out of state, how we will track that. On the student piece, it's probably going to require more self-reporting and then self-isolating. From the staff point of view, we can probably be quite a bit more aggressive on what we're asking. And I've been working with Mr. Dietrich, our legal counsel, on developing that. I'm hoping to have that piece out to our staff late this week or at the beginning of next week on kind of some of those administrative rules and guidelines that we're going to try to put in place to account for that. But yeah, we can ask those questions.
I'm just curious if there's gonna be a guideline, I'm not for it, I'm just curious if there's gonna be a guideline.
Yeah, there'll be, again, that's part of the communication we're gonna put out from Wood County Health is, if you've traveled, and those are some things I've already put out to staff, like if you've traveled, keep in mind.
So is there gonna be a guideline?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you with the staff right now, or with the students, it's probably an unenforceable or an untrackable guideline. It'll be more of a recommendation with the students. That has to do with, that's going to be, if they go somewhere and don't tell us, we'll never know. Yeah.
Unless they get sick.
Yeah, but again, that all predicates a level of cooperation. We're going to ask for as much cooperation as possible, but yeah, that's going to really be more of a please cooperate with us versus
That's a situation that you're seeing now with people that are partying and carrying on and going places they shouldn't go and being in places they shouldn't be.
Yep.
And they don't get it. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And obviously, we're going to work with the county on contact tracing. The communications piece of all this, we'll do some communicating when positive cases have been identified to the groups that we need to communicate with. I've got some letters and basically ways of communication that we've already have made available to us to make sure that we get out that information. Again, we still have to follow the privacy laws. So there are some health privacy laws we cannot violate, but that doesn't mean we can't communicate when there's been, identified positive cases and whatnot. We certainly can. And of course, just being in conjunction with Wood County Health. After school and before school activities. So this is probably going to be an area where, if we're opening, this is going to be an area that's going to be difficult for people to adjust to, because at least through the first quarter, at least with the morning reading program and morning library at the high school, we're going to cease that operation initially. Part of that reason really has to do with the fact that we could get 40 to 50 people or students, and especially here at the elementary school. That program has relied on reading volunteers, the therapy dog volunteers, and others to volunteer and come in and help coordinate and run that program. Those volunteers aren't going to be able to come into the building, and so now we're left with a staff member, maybe two, to try to coordinate all of that. And that's, at least through that first quarter, what we'd like to do is suspend that program and then evaluate it as the quarter goes on, and look to see if there's a possibility of reopening it in the second quarter. So again, that's something it's pained us to come to that conclusion. Kara could probably comment on that more for the morning reading here, but really without that ability to use volunteers to really help operate that program, it becomes extraordinarily difficult. Boys and Girls Club, on the other hand, is planning on running Boys and Girls Club sessions for after school. So.
What is the status of the 4K remodel at the old Y?
On time and on time.
Everything's going well?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep, the 4K. So the question, Kathy, was just about the 4K progress at the YMCA building and the remodel. And my last discussion about a week ago with the YMCA was will be done on time. They'll be able to utilize that space.
Awesome.
Yep. We're going to obviously work with Boys and Girls Club on how that programming looks, where they can have access to, where they can't, and they will staff that program. And that program will basically act as kind of its own cohort. Athletics and clubs. There's been a lot of change going on across the state on this. Our conference met today. We have pushed back some first contest dates, but right now, at the moment, we're still in line with practice start dates. However, I know from, as I mentioned earlier, the Department of Health Services is putting out some more recommendations on what this might look like, and they're going to give recommendations. They're not going to be hard and fast rules. That may change some of where we take this planning. So I don't mean to make light of the athletics and activities, but this is kind of where I've put this in the order of importance. We've certainly done some things already with athletics and activities. We've had a summer school lifting program that's been running just fine. We've had contact days. We've got one of our head coaches sitting here that have run fine. We've put procedures in place and asking the students to self-monitor and not arrive after travel and those things, and we've had great cooperation. But I will say this. The soonest we're going to start like football or volleyball is September 7th. So right now on the list of things that need to get done, that's 1,275 out of the 3,000 that need to get done. So it's not necessarily in the highest priority of, we're working on it. Mr. Seltenpole's working on it. But we know we still have some change that's coming in that area. So we're not hyper-focused on, like, are we having athletics on, XYZ date. That's yet to be seen in some things. So, and our conference is well aware of that. But we have done some things within the conference. If we are able to go, we're limiting to conference-only events, at least through the fall sports season, and some of those pieces. So our primary focus has to be day one, trying to educate kids. Activities and athletics are going to come after that. So the final piece here, how are we going to start our year? Obviously, we'd like to start fully reopened with all of these and even probably more modifications than I can begin to mention on day one if possible. I will put the great big caveat to that obviously DHS and DPI are working together. They are working on issuing some recommendations regarding metrics and those pieces for reopening. We're obviously working with the Wood County Health Department. As of yesterday, the Wood County Health Department administrator said these plans look good. But there are refinements we need to make yet to this. What I would, I guess, ask the board to do tonight is approve this plan, but give the administration the ability to adjust the plan as needed. And also give us that ability to make that call on how exactly we open the school year as we need to make that call. Certainly, if you've got questions or adjustments you'd like to see, we'll certainly entertain what we can and try to make it a go. So.
Kyle, I just want to thank you and all the staff. I know this is hard work, and you've done an excellent job. Everyone's worked overtime on this, and I know we cannot please all of the people all of the time, but I think the plan that's been laid out is a great one.
I'd second that. This is a remarkable accomplishment considering how fluid the situation has been. Dozens and dozens of people have obviously worked very, very hard on this. And there's no, this is unprecedented. There's no, it isn't like you can be trained to do this. You guys are making this work on the fly. It's like, oh, that looked good last week, not so good now, guess we have to fix it. And that makes the little planning model that teachers seem to have built into their head just go off on a tangent, and it is probably making a lot of you nuts. And your efforts are appreciated in more ways than anybody can tell you. Thank you.
Leo, the teaching staff, I think, has come to the realization they have to plan for multiple contingencies, and it's hard because they are planners. And they're, you know, we've already got some in-service set up to assist with some of the new components to some of this, such as the infinite classroom piece, the block teaching piece. We've got pieces in place where we've got scheduled in-service time already with our staff. The health department would be willing to give us their recommendations. They might tell us that we have to, but what I have a feeling it's going to be is a recommendation of what to do. It's just how they're, you know, they're going to give us a recommendation, and certainly we'll consult with them. There are other reasons we may have to, I would posit this as a scenario. From the data that's out there, youth tend to be more asymptomatic in COVID than adults. And so very potential that we have asymptomatic youth, and probably a lot of asymptomatic people already out there. But it would be potential that we'd have asymptomatic youth that never know they have COVID. But we could have a situation where we run short on teaching staff that might require us to change directions. Without the health department telling us yes, no, or otherwise. I certainly see that as a potential where, and I sleep up, I stay up late at night thinking of these and wake up at 3 in the morning thinking of all these scenarios, but that's certainly one that's come back in my mind. Like, I see that potentially happening where we've got staff members who have to be out and we just don't have enough substitutes to make it work.
If you haven't seen it yet, the very back page of this morning's Tribune, I get it electronically. Jeanette puts a Corona update section at the very back of the paper every morning. The very last page of this morning's Tribune is school reopening visuals, graphics, stats, other things. It's very, very interesting from the standpoint of what we're talking about doing right here. if you haven't seen it, go to the Tribune's website, look in, scroll through this morning's paper and go to the very last page. It's all graphs, visuals, snippets, saying just exactly the sort of thing you just mentioned about how young people of various age groups, little folk or older kids, respond to this very differently. It's statistics. You can make them say what you want them to say, but it was this particular piece this morning was very interesting, reflecting just exactly what you just said.
So, I guess I had a question now that, from Ben's question. If we pass this motion with the caveat or whatever to give you the ability to go to a different plan, will that be coming back here before us first, or do you
Well,
have the ability to implement the plan before it?
we would, we're talking about, so just so I can clarify, you're talking about a scenario where we would have to, that scenario where we have to make that decision to shut down school.
Or
I mean,
Yeah, I guess that,
I don't know, that might not be something that we can bring back to
Right.
the board.
right,
It may be something where I get a call at 6 in the morning from the director of the Wood County Health Department saying, hey, X, Y, and Z has happened. We think you need to shut down school today. And so I don't know that that's logistically something that happens that way.
right.
Yeah.
You're talking about recommendations.
Yeah.
Your house is on fire, the fire department recommends that you run out of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like,
So-
okay,
Yeah, this plan is set up to be fluidly, to move from one to the other at a moment's notice should we have to. And again, yes, we're gonna get recommendations from Wood County Health, but at the same time, we may end up with our own internal situation that forces us
right,
to
By the same token.
change plans.
Too, if it doesn't apply to us, you
Yep.
don't necessarily need to
Right.
take that. And,
Yep,
I mean, whatever we can do to keep the kids
Yeah.
learning in school is
Yep.
so beneficial to those kids.
yep,
And so what's been laid out is absolutely a great way to hopefully, keep
Yep.
it that way. And, yeah, any adjustments that have to be made, whether it's mandated, obviously then there is no choice, if it's mandated. But, if it's recommendations that maybe don't apply, I guess that's, I think, where Ben is saying we would like to have some say-so.
yeah, and that absolutely, I think that's something, I can communicate back to the board and make sure that you're,
Would that be?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if all of a sudden Rapids decides one thing, I hope we don't follow Rapids or
Yeah.
our local school district, that we look at our own
Yep.
issues and
we
take
can
care
do
of those.
things that Rapids, Nakusa, Point, other districts of other sizes can't do because we're pretty small.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a two-edged sword, it cuts both ways, but in this particular instance,
By the
smaller numbers give us
by the same,
better opportunities.
by the same thing, if an unforeseen, catastrophe, yeah, you obviously have to make that decision immediately.
yeah.
So-
No, and I understand where you're at
Yeah,
with that.
correct.
So,
I mean, yep.
Everybody hopes that happens, but nobody hoped any of this was gonna happen. You want the motion, John?
All right, yeah, is there any other discussion? Or go ahead, make a motion.
I move to approve the existing plan as presented with the ability for administration to adjust as necessary to ensure safe educational process in the Port Edward School. Is that sufficient?
that works.
Is that appropriate?
Second.
A motion and a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion is approved. Next item is call for adjournment.
So
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
I think you should-
They've adjourned the meeting.